Welcome to the Fire Marshal course, presented by Safe Train Consulting.
Each fire we've seen throughout this series quickly outgrew anyone's ability to control it. But they all started small, and at one point in every fire, an employee reacting quickly with a portable fire extinguisher could have changed the course of events.
One thing we don't want you to do is get too close. When you first start to fire it up, because you can see it come back on you.
Fire experts agree there are two primary mistakes people make with portable fire extinguishers. The first one?
Underestimate the fire and overestimate what that fire extinguisher is going to do. They've got to understand that they're called first aid fire appliances. That means they're supposed to be used in the very first couple of minutes of a fire.
The second common mistake people make is thinking they know how to use the fire extinguisher, but not practicing in advance.
And I've gone to a lot of fires where there's a fire extinguisher hanging on the wall. And we say, well, did anybody think to use the extinguisher? The answer was no.
This video will assist you in making the right decisions when you have a fire in your workplace. Evacuating other people from the area and notifying the fire department first. Knowing how to protect yourself if you decide to fight the fire. And incorporating hands-on training techniques into your own safety activities.
Those three things pretty much assure that you got the fire department coming, you've done what you can to limit damage, but you're protecting life.
In the first few seconds of a fire, there are specific questions which determine whether you should attempt to fight the fire with a portable fire extinguisher. Do you know where your extinguisher is located without having to look for it? Do you know how to use it and what to expect when you pull the pin?
You don't know what the duration of an extinguisher is unless you've used one. You can have in your mind's eye the fact that you think you know, but you won't really know till you squeeze that trigger and watch how long it takes before it runs out of pressure.
Do you have a clear escape route behind you so you won't be trapped by the fire?
Here's one of the larger ones.
Is your extinguisher large enough to fight the fire?
All fire extinguishers have a rating to them, 1A, 2A, 3A, etc. That rating has to do with how big a fire. And there's kind of a ground rule. The smaller the extinguisher, the smaller the fire.
Does your extinguisher match the type of fire you're fighting?
Wood, paper, and cloth. It's got a pictograph here that shows you a picture of a trash can, which is real typical of a Class A fire.
There are three basic classes of fire, and all fire extinguishers are labeled according to those fires they can put out. Class A are for ordinary combustibles. Class B extinguishers are for flammable liquids. And Class C are for electrical equipment and wiring. ABC multi-purpose extinguishers can be used on all three classes of fire.
And you aim this at the base of the fire and sweep.
Most importantly, do you feel confident in your ability to put out the fire? If you answered no to any of these questions, evacuate and don't attempt to put out the fire. And if you've decided to use the fire extinguisher, begin evacuating others from the building first and make sure help is on the way.
If a fire breaks out, you've got to notify the fire department and use the extinguisher in that order. You don't grab the extinguisher and try to fight the fire, and then if that extinguisher runs out, then grab another one and try to put it out, and grab another one and try to put it out without notifying the fire agency. Because fire grows at an incredibly rapid rate once it goes to open flame production. And if you haven't gotten the fire department en route, you're in deep trouble.
They must take responsibility because when it happens, it's going to involve them more than they would have ever imagined. And the loss is tremendous, not only financial, emotional, and physically. The scars don't go away. That's the message.
And it's easy for people to underestimate underestimate the power of fire, believing they can control it without help.
They think they can. They think they can.
See how it flares up? So you want to approach differently.
Hands-on training is an important key to becoming comfortable using a fire extinguisher before there's a real fire.
And that's one of the reasons, of course, why it's a good idea to have demonstrations or let people see this go on. Even if everybody can't do it, at least everybody can see it.
And you just pull it out, and then you lift this up.
And training with coworkers can offer additional benefits.
And you sweep back and forth like this at the base of the
Two
fire.
people are safer than one in fighting a fire. And in case something goes wrong, you never know if there's an aerosol can in that wastebasket that's on fire and suddenly it explodes and it could knock you out or injure you in some way, and your buddy would then be able to get you out safely. It's important to train that way.
Right.
The four-step procedure called PASS is the best way to practice using a portable fire extinguisher. Pull the pin to unlock the operating lever. Aim the nozzle or hose low at the base of the fire. Squeeze the lever to discharge the extinguishing agent, and sweep from side to side until the flames appear to be out. That's the PASS system. Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. In a real fire, if you've done everything right, but the extinguisher still fails to put out the fire,
It's a one-shot deal. You use it. If it doesn't fight the fire, you get out, get everyone out, let the fire department go in and effectively fight the fire.
pre-fire planning and training can give you the edge you'll need to react quickly in a fire emergency. But remember that portable fire extinguishers are tools for small fires only.
They've got to understand that they're called first aid fire appliances. A fire extinguisher is to a fire what a Band-Aid is to a cut.
The Fire Marshal course is based on the fundamentals of firefighting techniques and procedures. The aim of this program is to clearly demonstrate and explain these fundamentals to every candidate, ensuring that they would be able to apply these fundamentals in a safe and correct manner in an emergency situation. Firefighting tips can always be picked up from common sense and observation. Increasing one's knowledge and skills in the handling of fire is only going to mean better handling of an emergency situation. Unfortunately, instinct might not be enough to save your life in an emergency situation. Fire is the rapid oxidation of a material in the chemical process of combustion. Combustion releases heat, light, and various other products related to combustion. With certain fuels like paper or wood, the oxidation rate of the molecules can be very fast. If the heat cannot be released faster than it is created, then combustion happens. The flame is the visible portion of the fire and consists of glowing hot gases. If hot enough, the gases may become ionized to produce plasma or flammable gases. Depending on the substances alight and any impurities outside, the color of the flame and the fire's intensity may be different. There are 3 basic ingredients that are required to create fire. The first one is fuel. To start and maintain a fire, you need the right kind of fuels. Consider that any substance, whether solid, gas, or liquid form, can be classified as fuel. The second ingredient is oxygen. Oxygen is an invisible gas in the air that fire consumes as part of the burning process. The oxygen sustains the fire, and as it is used up, it must be replaced for the fire to continue burning. The third ingredient is heat. To initially start a fire, it is necessary to apply heat to the fuel, in the form of a flame or spark. This heat must raise the fuel to its ignition temperature. Continued heat is then needed to keep the fuel at its ignition temperature, and therefore keep the fire going. This heat is usually supplied by the fire itself. The fire tetrahedron therefore consists of fuel, oxygen, heat, and a chain reaction. Once a fire is started, a combustion reaction begins, and the fire will either grow or diminish, or reach a steady state. If the energy, in the form of heat and light, produced by the reaction, is sufficient to heat nearby combustible materials to their ignition point, the fire will grow and spread. A combustible material's ignition point is the temperature where the material can ignite. If there is not sufficient energy, the fire will self-extinguish. Of course, there must be all the reactants available, including fuel and air. Some materials provide their own supply of oxygen, so they will burn even in the absence of air. Causes of a fire include the following: human error, for example malicious or accidental damage; overheating of mechanical equipment; overloading of electrical equipment, and chemical reactions. Fires are classified according to the type of fuel that is burning. The classification system is designed to simplify the decisions that must be made when choosing extinguishing agents. Fires are placed into one of 5 classes, but may fit into more than one class. Class A fires involve ordinary solid combustible materials, such as wood, paper, and cloth. The best way to extinguish a Class A fire is to cool the fuel to a temperature below its ignition temperature. Smothering a Class A fire to exclude oxygen may be a temporary solution. It will not cool the fuel and can reignite if exposed to fresh air. Class B fires involve flammable liquids like oil, petrol, paints, and tar. The best way to extinguish a Class B fire is to create a barrier between the fuel and the oxygen. A layer of foam is applied to the surface of the fuel to stop the production of vapors. Class C fires involve energized electrical equipment. Electricity itself doesn't burn, but it provides energy that can ignite a fire. The most common extinguishing agents are CO2 and dry chemical agents, because they do not conduct electricity. If the electrical source is disconnected, it becomes a Class A or a Class B fire. Class D fires involve burning solids like sodium, potassium, and many other alloys. These fires are less common, but can be very difficult to extinguish. If water is used, it can produce explosive hydrogen gas. Special extinguishing powders, based on sodium chloride, are available for these fires. You can also use clean dry sand is another option. Class K fires involve combustible cooking media, such as oils and fats, commonly found in industrial kitchens. Wet chemical extinguishers are used to protect Class K installations. Preparation for danger situations is a key factor in fire safety. All employees should know where the fire escape routes are, how to activate the fire alarm, and the location of stairway exits. Everyone in the building must participate and practice fire drills periodically. Combustible materials such as paper should be stored properly and not stacked up. Typical office equipment, such as copiers, coffee makers, and hot plates, should be kept away from anything flammable. Poor quality or defective appliances have a bigger chance of developing electrical shorts, leading to shock hazards and fires. Office fires can start as a result of electricity malfunction or misuse. Smoke detectors should be properly installed and maintained frequently. Install an office sprinkler system to fight fire as soon as it ignites. Fire extinguishers are another important type of fire equipment to have on hand, even if you have a sprinkler system. It is recommended that storage areas are located away from heat sources. Heat-generating equipment should be kept away from combustibles such as paper. Properly maintain all electrical equipment. Do not overload electrical outlets and minimize the use of extension cords. The first step to prepare for an emergency is to find out what the emergency telephone's numbers are for the area you are working in, and to make sure that every health and safety representative have the numbers available. The numbers should also be given to all the department and section heads, and should be displayed in prominent places all over the workplace. The national emergency telephone number is 10177 112 or 107. It is important to make sure the fire escape routes are safe and that emergency evacuation plans are in place. If possible, install an alarm system. It is important to train the staff, especially the fire marshals. Care and maintenance of fire extinguishers are very important to ensure that they will work effectively when they are needed. Inspect the fire extinguishers at least once a month. In more severe environments, inspection should be adapted accordingly. Ensure that the extinguisher is not blocked by equipment, coats, or other objects that could interfere with access in an emergency. Check that the extinguisher pressure is at the recommended level. On extinguishers equipped with a gauge, the needle should be in the green zone, not too high, and not too low. Some manufacturers recommend shaking your dry chemical extinguishers once a month to prevent the powder from settling or packing. The nozzle or other parts should not be hindered in any way. The pin and tamper seals should be intact. There shouldn't be any dents, leaks, rust, chemical deposits, and/or other signs of abuse or wear. Wipe off any corrosive chemicals, like oil and gunk, that may have deposited on the extinguisher. When checking the fire equipment, the following checks must be included. Ensure all fire equipment is readily available. Check all extinguishers, they are not to be damaged in any way. Storage areas for all fire equipment to be clearly marked and free from any obstruction. Ensure the correct placement of fire equipment. Check the condition and location of the main electrical switch. Check the condition and location of the fire alarm button. Ensure that you know the fire drills of the company and the alarm system. As with any equipment, we need to ensure that the equipment is in a good working order. There are checks that we should do on a regular basis. Fire extinguishers are used to extinguish or contain small fires. The safety pin must be in place and sealed. Check if the gauge is in the red or green zone. Check the condition of the hose for signs of wear and tear. The date of service must be less than 12 months away, and the nozzle must not be blocked. Check the general condition of the extinguisher, looks for signs of corrosion or damage. Check that the fire extinguisher is unobstructed, and that there is signage on the wall, indicating where the extinguisher is. Fire buckets are used to throw sand or water on fires. Check the general condition of the bucket for corrosion or damage. The fire bucket must be unobstructed. Signage must also be placed on the wall where the bucket is placed. Fire hoses are used to extinguish large fires. Their safety pins must be in place and sealed. Check if the fire hose's gauge is in the red or green zone, as well as the condition of the hose. The date of service must be within 12 months, and the nozzle must not blocked. The fire hose must be unobstructed, and there must be signage on the wall. Fire blankets are used to throw over a person who burns, or on a burning object. Check that the fire blanket is clean and without any cuts. Under Section 8 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act 85 of 1993, the employer has a duty to provide and maintain a healthy and safe working environment. This includes providing a safe system of work, information, training, supervision, and where appropriate, personal protective equipment. Under Section 26, persons who manage or control workplaces must ensure that the workplace and the means of entering and leaving it are safe and without risks to health. As part of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Minister has also enforced the environmental regulations. The environmental regulations states the requirements in the workplace for the following. Thermal requirements, which are the temperature that an employee is permitted to work in. Lighting, which includes the lighting and illuminance in the workplace. Windows, which give the windows specifications in the workplace. Ventilations, giving the prescribed natural or mechanical ventilation in the workplace. Housekeeping, enforcing a clear and unobstructed space. Noise and hearing conservation, controlling the noise levels in the workplace. Precautions against flooding are also included, as well as fire precautions and means of egress. Prosecution is the main means by which the health and safety enforcing authorities hold to account those alleged to have committed serious breaches of health and safety law. Health and safety law provide few sentencing options for the courts, and conviction usually results in a fine. However, the wider criminal justice system provides many ways by which to hold an offender to account. There are 4 methods of extinguishing fires, namely smothering, starvation, cooling, and chemical reaction inhibition of a fire. Multipurpose dry chemical agents are used for Class A, B, and C fires. A dry chemical agent called monoammonium phosphate. The chemical is non-conductive and can be mildly corrosive if moisture is present. To avoid corrosion, it is necessary to scrub and thoroughly clean up the contacted area once the fire is out. A dry chemical fire extinguisher is usually used in schools, general offices, hospitals, and homes. Regular dry chemical agents are used for Class B and C fires. These extinguishers contain a dry chemical agent called sodium bicarbonate. It is non-toxic, non-conductive, and non-corrosive. It is easy to clean up, requiring only vacuuming, sweeping, or flushing with water. Extinguishers with sodium bicarbonate are usually used in residential kitchens, laboratories, and garages. Carbon dioxide is used for Class B and C fires. Carbon dioxide removes oxygen to stop a fire, but has limited range. It is environmentally friendly and leaves no residue, so cleanup is unnecessary. Extinguishers with carbon dioxide are usually used in contamination-sensitive places, such as computer rooms, labs, food storage areas, and processing plants. Halitren is used for Class A, B, and C fires. Halitren is a vaporizing liquid that is ozone-friendly and leaves no residue. Because it requires no cleanup, fire extinguishers with halitren are ideal for computer rooms, telecommunication areas, and theaters. Halon extinguishers are no longer made, but some may still be in use. Dangerous gases are formed when halon is used to put out fires. After use, do not allow anyone to enter the area until it has been well ventilated. Foam is used on Class A and B fires. Foam floats on flammable liquids to tame the fire and helps prevent reflashes. To clean up the affected area, it must be washed away and left to evaporate. Fire extinguishers with foam are usually used in garages, homes, vehicles, and workshops. Purple K dry chemical is used on Class B and C fires. Purple K extinguishers contain a dry chemical called potassium bicarbonate. It is non-conductive and non-corrosive. Cleanup requires vacuuming, sweeping, or flushing with water. Extinguishers with potassium bicarbonate are usually used in military facilities, oil companies, and vehicles. Water is only used on Class A fires. The most common agent is water, however, it cannot be used for Class B or C fires because it is conductive. Water-based fire extinguishers are usually used in stockrooms, schools, and offices. Fire safety requirements include implementing a plan for responding to fires, providing appropriate training, and supplying the appropriate fire protection equipment. These are the 6 basic steps in extinguishing a fire. First, locate the fire extinguisher. Secondly, select the proper classification of extinguisher. Thirdly, transport the fire extinguisher to the location of the fire. Number 4, activate the extinguisher to release the extinguishing agent. Number 5, apply the extinguishing agent to the fire for maximum effect. Lastly, ensure your personal safety by having an exit route. Activating a fire extinguisher is a single operation in 4 steps. Remember the acronym PASS to activate an extinguisher. Pull the safety pin. Aim the nozzle at the base of the flames. Squeeze the trigger to discharge the agent. Sweep the nozzle across the base of the flames. These are the 6 basic steps in extinguishing a fire with a hose reel. Firstly, locate the hose reel. Secondly, take nozzle and unroll hose. Thirdly, open the main valve and make sure there is water pressure. Number 4, transport the nozzle end of the hose reel to the location of the fire. Number 5, aim the nozzle at the base of the fire with a sweeping motion. Spray water on fire. The nozzle activates with a twisting motion. Lastly, ensure your personal safety by having an exit route. Currently, the technique preferred in firefighting involves dragging a person by the shoulders or upper clothing in a supine position across the floor or ground. This uses the rescuer's upper legs, which are the strongest muscles in the body, to push against the floor for leverage and to pull the person towards an exit. This technique is also easier for rescuers who may be younger or of smaller size or stature. In addition, dragging, especially feet first, helps avoid stressing a potentially injured spine. Put on the fire-resistant gloves, if available. Unfold the fire blanket so that it is completely opened. Hold the fire blanket with your hands wrapped in the top edge of the blanket. This will protect your hands from the heat and flames. Completely cover the flames with the fire blanket by throwing the blanket on top until the fire goes out. Put flames out on a person's clothes by wrapping the fire blanket around the victim. Let the fire blanket cool completely for 30 minutes to 1 hour after the fire is out. Fold it back up for storage. Most fire blankets are designed to be reused. Smoke detectors were developed because in the presence of fire, smoke was noticeable and a risk to life before the heat of the fire was great enough to set off sprinkler systems. If there is smoke in the room, this sets off the alarm. In this way, a smoke alarm will warn the occupants of the building well before a conventional fire alarm. Fire alarms simply respond by the heat of the fire, causing a bimetal strip to bend, so that the metal closes a circuit that has a bell in it. When the circuit is closed, the bell rings and warns the occupants of the specific structure in case of fire. Sprinkler systems respond by the heat of the fire melting a seal in a sprinkler system and releasing water through a system of sprinklers in the building on fire. Simply by using your sense of sight and smell, the presence of fire can be easily detected. This can also be utilized as an early warning mechanism. Remember that verbal notification as well as manual activation of fire alarm systems can also contribute to the fire warning system. The popularity of propane gas for heating and cooking has caused these cylinders to become commonplace in residential areas and other locations. Propane gas is heavier than air, so it will flow along the ground and accumulate in low areas. It is non-toxic, but it can displace oxygen and cause asphyxiation. A large quantity of fuel can be stored in a small container. Mercaptan is added to propane to create a distinctive smell. A discharge valve keeps the gas from escaping and controls the gas flow into the system where it is used. In the event of fire, closing the valve should stop the flow of the gas and extinguish the fire. Do not attempt to extinguish the flames unless the source of the flame has been shut off or all the fuel has been consumed. Always remember in an emergency race. Rescue or assist anyone in danger. Alarm, call for backup. Contain the fire. Extinguish the fire. Do not be a hero. If it's too big, then get out. If a fire occurs, sound the alarm and leave the building immediately, closing all doors behind you. If you have been trained as a fire marshal, you must try to extinguish the fire, but if it is too big, then exit the building and join up with the other firefighters. Follow the route for your group as determined in the evacuation plan. If smoke blocks your primary exit, use another one. If you must exit through the smoke, stay low by crawling on your hands and knees. Help the injured and lead others to the exits. Check doors before opening them. Kneel or crouch at the door, reach up and touch the door, knob, and frame. If you feel warmth on or around the door, use another escape route. If the door feels cool, open it slowly and carefully, with your shoulder against it. Slam the door shut if you see flames or smoke on the other side. Call the local emergency number, no matter how small the fire appears to be. Follow directions from fire and security personnel. Once outside, move away from the building to the designated meeting location, out of the way of firefighters. Here roll call will be held, to determine if anybody is missing. Remain outside until the operations manager or the fire department says you may go back in. If you are trapped in a fire, stay calm, close all doors and windows, attract attention by calling out for help, or use a phone. Do not break windows as oxygen will be added to the fire and may make the fire worse. Now that you know what types of fires you could potentially be dealing with, and the equipment that should be used to extinguish them, you should also note that the situation can change. Fires are largely unpredictable if you aren't a trained firefighter and don't take all the variables into account. These variables may include changes in wind direction, backdraft, ventilation, release of hazardous substances, radiation, or incorrect application of firefighting procedures. Fire monitoring issues include the status of the fire, the status of the firefighting equipment, controlling access, structural damage, equipment retrieval, and firefighting casualties. If you look at the picture below, you will see that some sort of substance has been released, and it looks like the wind is blowing to the right. It is important to give this information when calling the fire brigade for help. Of course, you would say the wind is blowing, for example, northwest, and not right, since they won't know which direction is your right at that moment. You can also see that there is quite a bit of structural damage, and it is not safe to enter the building. Retrieval of casualties will have to be left to the fire brigade personnel, who are familiar with unsafe structures. What you could do in a situation like this, though, is control access to the site. It is important not to let anyone go into the structure, and of course, during the evacuation procedure, get as many people as possible out. It is also important to keep a safe distance from the fire or structure that is burning. Try to put out the fire without risking your own and other people's lives. Only tackle a fire in its very early stages. Ensure that you can retreat to safety should the fire become uncontrollable. Do not allow the fire to block off your escape. Do not open a door without feeling for heat first, with the back of your hand. The door handle is a conductor of heat, and will give you an idea of how hot it is on the other side. When you must open a door, stay behind the door or a wall for protection, in case of a flashover. Start attacking the fire from a distance, moving in closer as the fire dies down. A crouching attitude should be adopted, to protect you against heat and smoke. Close all doors and windows on the way out. When in the open, attack the fire from the windward side, and move with the extinguisher to ensure the extinguisher reaches the whole fire area. Always try to have another employee with an extinguisher, backing up as a safety precaution, and, where necessary, a two-pronged attack should be made. Make sure that the fire has been completely extinguished. Evacuate according to the evacuation plan. Emergencies make people act differently. During these critical moments, the success of the investigation is usually affected most. A lot of critical things happen in quick order. The supervisor who is trained adequately can both reduce the extent of the loss and ensure that the accident scene is not unduly disturbed or vital evidence removed. Control potential secondary accidents by securing the scene. Secondary accidents can sometimes be even more serious than the first fire or incident, as the normal controls have been weakened by the fire or incident. The site can be secured by means of demarcating the area, and instruct workers not to enter the demarcated area, or to remove any article or substance from the area. Source of evidence should be identified, essential information should be secured before it can be removed or destroyed. When the fire brigade arrives, it is important for the person who was in charge to hand the site over to them. This will include updating the firefighters on the amount of people trapped inside, if any changes in the fire since you phoned the fire brigade, and the contents of the building or the combustible material in the fire, for example chemicals, petrol and diesel. When retreating from the site, it is important to do so in an orderly fashion to ensure that no one else gets hurt, lost or is unaccounted for. After retreating from the site, it is always a good idea to do a roll call. This means you will have a list of people who were present before the fire started, and their names are called out and marked of if they are present. By doing this, you will eliminate the possibility of someone being trapped in the fire and not knowing about it. By retreating from a site, it is meant that you are withdrawing or moving back from the site. It is important to stay at a safe distance. Remember, there could be a backdraft or an explosion, and the distance between you and the fire should be great enough for you not to get caught in a situation like this. It is also important to be at a distance where you are out of the way of the firefighters, so they can perform their jobs without obstruction. Their reaction time is of utmost importance when it comes to the outcome of the situation. When trapped in a smoke-filled room, stay as low to the ground as possible. Crawl on your hands and knees. Use the left-hand rule to find the exit. Cover your mouth with a wet cloth, if possible, to avoid smoke inhalation. If your clothes are on fire, stop, drop, and roll. Use a fire blanket to smother the flames if available. Always remember that hot air and smoke rises to the upper level of the room. If possible, never leave doors or windows open as you exit the burning environment. Be prepared for poor visibility in a smoke-filled environment. To fight a fire effectively, you need a firefighting strategy that involves the following basic procedures. Arriving at the scene of the fire as rapidly as possible. Assessing the nature of the fire by determining its intensity and extent. The type and abundance of fuel, the danger of entering the fire area. The most effective techniques for extinguishing the fire. Locating and rescuing endangered persons. Containing the fire by protecting adjacent areas. Ventilating the fire area to allow for the escape of heat and toxic gases. Finally, extinguishing the fire.